Mamas, thanks so much for being here with us. We have Cheryl Cardall. Cheryl is a parent coach, a passionate advocate for strengthening families, and an educator about mental health. She has a bachelor's degree in human and family development and has a lifelong passion for learning about what creates strong families and has made it her life's work to learn, grow, and help other families. For over a decade, she has been encouraging and teaching moms to believe in themselves and to realize the answers to most of their pressing parenting questions are inside them. Cheryl is a mom of 5 vastly different children, ages 10 to 21, and has been married to her husband, David, for 25 years. Several years ago, her children started suffering with some severe mental health challenges, and there weren't enough resources or a community to turn to. Cheryl's podcast, Fight Like a Mother, was created from that desire to have a place to go for mental health resources, knowledge, and community. Cheryl, thank you so much for being here with me.
Thank you for having me so much.
We're going to be talking about dropping the agenda and how giving up the control will give you the best relationship of your life. So that's what I want to ask you. What does it mean to give up control in order to have a better relationship?
So I'm a mom of 5 kids, and I think before you have kids and as they're growing and things, we kind of have this picture of what life is going to be like, of what we hope for them. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having those hopes and dreams for our kids and hoping that they'll do certain things. But as they grow, you start to realize that they're their own person. You know, I have 5 really different kids. They're all so unique personality-wise. And I think that kind of one of my favorite phrases is drop the agenda and just allow them to become the person that they're supposed to become. Mm-hmm. I think that radically accepting our kids for who they are and not who we think they should be is one of the most powerful ways to let our kids know that we unconditionally love them.
I love that so much. What advice do you have in order to do that? Because that can be hard when you do have that picture in your mind of what you, even sometimes the potential you see for your kids, and that can be detrimental as well. So what advice do you have for parents in order to drop the agenda?
Well, it's not easy. You know, it's not easy. It took actually another parent coach saying to me about one of my kids who I was having a really hard time with, because you know what? Sometimes we have struggles with our kids and we see things for them that probably might be a better choice than the choices that they're making. But she said, I think you have a choice here. She said, you can either try and stand in his way and he probably will bowl you over in the meantime and you'll be left in the dust, or you can drop your agenda for him and walk beside him and help him and support him and teach him and love him. But he has to choose that path. And so that's what I would say is you can stand there and make it a power struggle, or you can be there to guide them, to coach them, to love them, and to build that relationship with them, rather than trying to have this conflict that happens constantly when we're trying to have our agenda and they have their agenda, and they're really in control of that life, not us. And so I think that changing that mindset a little bit of, you know what, this is their journey, their path. I'm here to help them, guide them, not push them along.
We gave them life, but it is their life ultimately. So,
and I think that one thing that really has helped me is really finding my own identity, so that my identity isn't wrapped up in my kids and their accomplishments and their behaviors and things like that. I can separate myself from them. So if they're doing things that I don't agree with, it doesn't send a message about me. It's their life. And so I think that's a really powerful tool that we can work on as parents, is to really build up our own identity, really take care of ourselves so that our identity isn't so wrapped up in our kids. Because I think that's really easy to do, to be really wrapped up in our kids. And so then it does make us feel less than a parent, less of a mom, woman, dad, etc., when they aren't doing the things that we were hoping that they would do.
I think that's such good advice. So when you were able to shift your own mentality with your son specifically, how did that impact the relationship from what you saw?
Oh, it's greatly improved our relationship. It isn't about me wanting to control him. It's about us having open communication. It's about us partnering together to come up with some rules, collaborating together to talk about things that are happening. And it's created a much healthier relationship with us, with him, and with our other kids. It happens with all of our other kids as well.
I love that so much. And you mentioned that you were able to find some mental health illnesses or struggles in your own kids. How did you come across that?
Well, it started a few years ago. We started to see some real angry behavior, some rage, and some, even some destruction in our house. And, it shocked us. And people would say, oh, teenage boys do that, or, this happens, or you need to punish him, or, different things like that. We were getting all sorts of advice. And finally, I just knew something was off. I just knew something was going on. And so I started to do some research myself and found out that some of the symptoms that we were seeing were symptoms of depression and anxiety, especially in teen boys. And I had no idea that anger and some of those things were some of those symptoms. And so it was my own research. And finally, we were able to get him some help and things like that. But it really took me saying, you know what, I know in my gut that this isn't just a teenage thing. This is more than that.
I love that you said that, because the intuition, I think, is such a huge part of it. But what are some other ways that if a parent thinks their child might have some mental health issues, what are some signs that they should look for?
Okay. I think with teens, sometimes people don't know if it's teenage angst or moodiness, or if it is mental illness. And my two things to watch for are intensity and duration. So if the reactions to things are way more intense than is typical, I have a daughter with anxiety, and her responses to stress are really, really big, really, really intense. And it is a pretty chronic thing. And so I would say if responses to things are really intense, or they can't get out of bed, or they can't sleep, or there's no motivation, and it lasts for longer than a couple of weeks, that's when you need to look into getting some help.
And I'm assuming if we are wondering about ourselves, those are kind of the same types of things we should be looking for, right, when it comes to mental health.
I've been there myself. I have had I've had postpartum anxiety and depression. I have also had more situational anxiety and depression throughout my life. And my signs are always the same. It's sleep disruptions. It's sleeping too much, sleeping too little, eating disruptions, eating too much, eating too little, lack of motivation, just fear all the time. The symptoms are the same. With teens, there might be a little bit more intensity of the emotions. And again, that anger and rage can really be a symptom for teenagers.
So what's the first step that parents should take if they start recognizing that in their child?
I would say if you have a great relationship with a pediatrician, your pediatrician is probably your first step. We love our pediatrician. He's been amazing at helping us out. And he referred us to do some therapy. He actually had therapists that came into his office a couple times a week that we could go to. And if you don't have that kind of relationship with your pediatrician, find a good family practice doctor that you can talk to. But if they don't validate and believe that you have a concern, find somebody else, because you're the parent and they need to believe and value your opinion, and you need to be a team together. That's one of my favorite things our pediatrician says. He says, we're a team. I'm the medical professional. You're the parent. You have as much value as I do. And so find somebody that values your opinion and your beliefs.
I love that. And that can be difficult to do sometimes. So
it can be, but don't give up. Also, therapy. I think a lot of people don't think their kids need therapy until they're in crisis mode. We don't have to have a mental health diagnosis to get therapy. If your child is struggling, get them some additional help. Therapy has helped our family so much. And some of my kids have done it without a diagnosis, without being in crisis mode. They just needed a little extra support. You want to treat cancer before it's stage 4, right? That's the ideal, to catch it early. Same with mental illness. We don't want to get to stage 4 where they're having suicidal thoughts and in crisis mode. Let's treat it early and get our kids some support. There's no shame in therapy. There's no shame in getting extra help.
It's a wonderful, wonderful tool. And mental illness in children can also take a toll on the parents big time.
Absolutely.
So what advice do you have for parents of children who do have some mental illness?
Again, it goes back to you doing things for you, taking care of yourself. I've gone to therapy myself, doing things that build you up, that strengthen you, that help you, because you can't help this child if you are in a deep, dark pit. And I've been there. I've been there in a, really dark place myself because of the worry and the anxiety and everything. And it wasn't until I really started to take care of myself and learn some different skills and tools that I started to climb out of that. And now I don't parent from fear and worry anymore.
And you now are a coach, a parenting coach to other people. How has all of your experiences with this helped in your profession?
Well, it helps me significantly because I'm right there in the trenches with these parents. We're not out of the storm. We're not out of the mess. We're in the messy middle right now. I have 4 kids with mental health challenges, and I'm right there with them. So I know what they're feeling and what they're going through. And I also know that there's things that can help parents get out of that place of fear and worry and come from a place of confidence. It doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean that you solve the problems. It means that you yourself are in a place where you can do this. You have the tools, you have the strength that you can do this.
Let's talk about that fear, because I think that's something that's so important that a lot of us kind of draw from in parenting. I don't want my child to be this way, or, there's so many different thoughts you can have that are derived from fear. How do you kind of break out of that in order to have this confidence that you're talking about?
Well, I think society today teaches us to parent in fear. We talk about social media and technology with such fear-based claims so often that it puts us immediately into fear, so that when our child does something, immediately the thing is to take the phone away or to take the social media away or anything like that. And to me, that's fear-based, thinking that that's going to help anything. Instead, let's open up some communication with our kids. Let's talk about, I've noticed you've been on social media a lot lately. Can you tell me about that? What's going on? What's the draw for you? What do you like about social media? What do you feel about it? Have you ever had somebody send you an inappropriate picture or comment or things like that? We just have to break open these discussions. And, again, like pornography, drugs, there's all these things out there to fear as parents. And it's scary. It can be scary, and it can put us right in that place of fear. But when we parent from a place of fear, it breaks the connection with our kids, because we tend to react instead of respond. We tend to punish instead of communicate, and it breaks off that communication. So if we can take a step back and think, okay, they made a mistake on social media. Guess what? All kids are going to do that. They're all going to make mistakes on social media. They're kids, they're teenagers, they don't have a fully developed brain. They have the world in the palm of their hand. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to see pornography, all of these things. I think we have to decide ahead of time, what's our reaction going to be to them? Are we going to be defensive and angry and break off that connection? Or are we going to say, hey, you know what? I know it's hard. Social media can be hard sometimes. Can we talk about this? Empathize with them and come from a place of love, and that you want to build this connection with them so that they will come to you with the really hard things.
And it sounds like by doing that, by communicating more, you're building the trust on both sides, where you hopefully can trust them a little more, and they're going to trust you to be able to come to you with more things. Is that what you've seen?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We had one of our kids come to us with something really hard, and excuse me. And I thought, okay, what we've done, it's working, because there's no way a couple years ago he would have come to us, because we were those reactive parents. Oh, we're taking this away. We're taking control, instead of trying to bridge those gaps and those challenging things, because our kids need us today. They need us more than kids have ever needed their parents before. And so I think we have to parent differently, because they need to feel like they can come talk to us. They need to know that we're not going to flip out over something, because if we flip out over the little things, they're never going to come to us with the big things.
So true. Is there room in all that for some type of discipline still? So you don't want to be reactionary. You want to communicate more. Is there room for discipline on top of that?
Absolutely. But discipline is teaching, right? Discipline, the root of discipline is disciple, which means teach. And so I think that rather than thinking of discipline as punishments and consequences and things like that, we think about it teaching. Is this consequence that I'm imposing upon them teaching, or is it just reactionary? Yes, there have to be boundaries. They're living in our home. We do have rules. It doesn't mean it's a free-for-all for kids. There have to be boundaries, but we can do that in a loving way. It doesn't have to be a yelling, screaming match for us to set our boundaries.
So what I love that. I completely agree. What's an example of a discipline or a consequence that you can do that would teach them something, instead of just saying, go to your room for a few hours? You know, like what's an example of that?
Okay. Let's say you have a child who is skipping class at school.
Yeah.
And for us, consequences are, that means you don't get to hang out with friends because you're not doing your part. But it's not done. You can't hang out with friends. It's just, hey, we noticed you didn't go to school every period this day. You're not going to be able to hang out with friends today. And if it happens multiple times, it happens for the weekend too. So, as much as you can, setting some of those boundaries beforehand, before it happens, just so you know, this is a rule in our house. Your job is to go to school. If you don't go to school, there are consequences. I also think that using their phones for every punishment and reward gives it too much control. So we rarely, unless it's related to the phone, we rarely use the phone as a punishment or reward, because I don't want to give it that much power. It already has too much power in their lives, right?
So true. No, that makes sense. I like that advice a lot. So this conference is Confessions of an Imperfect Mother. And no matter how much we learn, we're always going to stumble and trip up and make mistakes. So do you have any examples in your own life where you maybe made a parenting mistake, but then everything turned out okay?
Oh, I have so many. I am so imperfect. And that's the thing, is we're all imperfect, and that's okay. You know what? We're all first timers in this parenting thing, and we make mistakes. Just a few weeks ago, there was a situation with one of my kids that I flipped out over. I came from a place of fear, and I was worried, and I saw him, and I exploded and yelled, and he went down to his room. And I went in my room and I thought, oh man, okay. So we cooled off. I let us cool off. And then I went down to his room and I asked him if I could rub his back. And he said yes. So I just sat and rubbed his back.
Who's going to say no to that, right?
Right? It's magic. Back rub for teenage boys, or boys, magic. Probably girls too, but I've noticed I have 4 boys and 1 daughter, so I have more experience.
Oh, there you go.
But just rubbed his back, and I didn't say anything for a few minutes. And finally I just said, you know what? I messed up this morning. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have yelled. We should have had a conversation about this. I apologize. And he said, Mom, I'm sorry too. I shouldn't have done what I did. And here's the thing, when you have that relationship with them, even if you blow up, even if you make mistakes, even if you yell and scream and take the phone away and all of that, we can repair it because we have that foundation. Mm. And we have that base where they're like, you know what? My mom made a mistake, but she really does love me and cares about my opinion and cares what I have to say because she does this on a regular basis. Now, they're not going to say that to you. They're kids and they're teenagers, and they're not going to say, Mom, you're so great. You always talk to me and communicate with me. They're not. But when you can have a situation where you blow up, you go to them and apologize and say, I should have done that differently. I'm sorry. It builds trust.
They might say those things to you 20 years later when they're parents themselves.
They might.
Right?
And they may still tell you, Mom, you're the worst mom, or I hate you. I mean, kids say that stuff. They don't mean it necessarily.
Yeah.
It's just big emotions that are coming out on you. So we can make mistakes. We do. We make mistakes every day, right? But it's that repair and that basis of a good relationship that are the key.
Cheryl, what's your number one takeaway that you have for moms that you want them to remember?
My number one takeaway for moms is to work on yourself. Work on your own identity, work on taking care of yourself. And I'm not saying pedicures and massages and all that are fun. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about every day having at least 15 to 30 minutes to take care of yourself. Reading a great book, taking a long bath, talking to a friend, going to lunch, doing something on a very, very regular basis to build up your own reserves so that when hard things happen with kids, you can take that breath and you have enough of a reserve to approach them calmly, because it all starts with us. It all starts right here with us. If we don't have that, if we're not taking care of ourselves, we can't, because we don't have enough reserve, because we're often the ones that everyone else is on our list but us, but we need to be on that list. We need to be on that list of care as well.
Such good stuff. Cheryl Cardall, dropping the agenda, how giving up the control will give you your best relationship of your life. Cheryl, thank you so much for taking the time with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hello, my name is Rich Christensen, and through the years of entrepreneurship and growing crazy businesses, I lost a view of what was really important. Through a series of really tender experiences, my mentor taught me you can replace anything in this world, but you cannot replace your family. So I made a dramatic pivot and started embedding deeply in my family some of the same principles that applied to business. My wife and I began very deliberately parenting. We looked for models, how not to mess our children up. There were really no good models to teach values, to entrench family unity, and to make sure that the values passed on in legacy to my children, and more importantly, my grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So like every great entrepreneur, I secretly created my own models. I was very hesitant to talk about it, but a few of my closest friends saw the impact that this was having on my children. I decided to take the processes that I used and create an online course so others could also work with their families to create tighter bonds, build confidence and self-esteem, while constructing a gorgeous legacy that they could live on past our lifetime. With this 5-part digital training series, you'll find the single most important lessons of thought leadership that I've ever created. There's 5 critical parts to this series, each with its very unique function. The first is symbols, creating unifying symbols that we all can touch to. Second is the doctrine, the guiding principles that we can tag and understand what the rules are. The third is the traditions or the rituals, where we actually formalize and we unite and show that we're unified with the values. The fourth, my favorite, the defining life events. The final section of this is the structure. What do the really wealthy families do to preserve their wealth and to pass on in the form of family banking? To pass on how you appropriately set up the will and how you embed your family constitution so that these values permeate and pass on. I can tell you firsthand that taking these steps to create a beautiful life for my family is the most important work that I've ever done and also the most rewarding. I would invite you to learn some of these principles, unify your family, bond them, and take some of the guesswork out of this. And I'm going to provide you the framework to make that happen with this 30 years of life experiences. So join me, get your membership to build family legacies today.